What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Combat FC podcast. My name is Marian, and I have one of the co-hosts here today, Rick Caldwell. So we'll dive into the previous fights that happened just a few weeks ago, and then Rick will dive into the next event coming up. What is it, Rick? February 10th? Am I
Yes,
right?
sir. February 10th.
Awesome. And then, of course, we won't be able to mention too many, or maybe not even one of the fights coming up, because it's, there are contracts and all kinds of stuff involved. But we'll announce some nice, cool things, so you guys can definitely tune in for the next interviews. They're gonna be probably in just a few weeks. We're going to start interviewing the guys, so then at that point we'll be able to release the some of the fights. But anyway, Rick, thanks for being here today. Let's dive right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for making time. I know our schedules have been a little hectic lately with the holidays, so it's good to get on and kind of wrap up CombatFC2 and
100%.
kind of start getting hyped for CombatFC3. It was a pretty crazy event. I mean, it surpassed all of our expectations, frankly. We knew it was going to be a good event. But I mean, after we got through the weigh-in, the fighters sold an absolutely absurd amount of tickets.
Nice.
It was so much more than we thought, and it was, normally we have more fighter returns, and normally we have some more expensive seats that we, because Joe has a handful of people that, whether it be people he's done business with in the past, that one of the sponsors, they give us a certain amount of money every fight, and we take care of, give them some tickets,
Seats and stuff. Yep.
But we don't do that until after the weigh-in. We figure out what's our best seats. So we had trouble, putting all of the people that we wanted to put in good seats because they were all gone.
Oh, wow. So, that's a good problem. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it was a good problem to have, but the press guys were giving me shit because the press guys were in a table in the last row of the floor.
Oh boy.
Normally we get them a little bit closer, but all of the close tables were gone. I mean, it was unbelievable.
What do you think? What was the main kind of driving factor of this event, do you think?
I think it's kind of a combination of things. The first event was good. I think that was something that, if you put on a good product, people will come back. And that's something that, Joe and I have believed in, even from when we were doing the shows years ago. If someone goes to your event and they have fun, and the fights themselves, you can never really predict how they're going to go. Right. I've matched up some fights that I thought were going to be okay fights, and they ended up being some of the best fights I've ever seen. And I matched up some fights that I was pumped about, and I thought it was going to be the best fight that we've ever had. And then stylistically, it just didn't work out, and it was kind of a boring fight. So you never really know what you're going to get in the cage, no matter who you book. And we see that happen in the UFC also. Like some of the fights that look like they're going to be crappy fight cards end up being amazing, and right. And some of the best title fights that that they've had end up being boring. I mean, so it's less about, I think, in the cage what happens. I mean, because you can't control it. But if the event itself is fun, like
the experience itself.
Yeah, if the experience is good, if there's not a ton of time between fights, and you keep the action moving, and I think people really appreciate the extra stuff, like the lights and the smoke machines and the screens and all that extra stuff they like. So we put on a good first event, and people that came to that event, I mean, we had a lot of ticket sales online too. And we saw that happen when we did it years ago, that we started off small, and then every show our pre-sale tickets and our online tickets got higher and higher. And we knew that was going to happen. I didn't think we realized it was going to happen that quick. I mean, we had more than 2,000 people there. You know, I think, you know, the number
Nice.
was probably closer to 22 or 2300. And when you compare that to some of the other shows in the area, you know, some of the venues don't hold many. Like most of the venues hold 1,000 or less, or in the vicinity of 1,000. Um, but even some of those shows, you know, you're talking about, you know, I mean, there have been some shows in the last 30 days that have had less than 500 people.
Oh
So,
wow.
you
That's
know,
tough.
yeah, it is, and it's you know, I think one thing that we did on top of the production, I think one thing that we do pretty well is people know what our identity is, or they know what to expect when they come to the show. Um, you know, and that's mixed martial arts, right? There'll be a handful of amateur fights to start the night, and then it's going to be mostly pro fights. Um, and you know, that's not to say that pro is better than amateur or anything like that, but we put on a pretty consistent product. Um, you know, and this was the same thing we did years ago too. We always tried to be around 13 or 14 fights. Um, and you know, we try to match good fights. You know, we try to we try to match fights in which you're not sure who's going to win in a lot of the fights. You know, fights that could go either way. Um, so I think people kind of know what to expect with our product, and it's a product that they like. I mean, I forget what the term in marketing is. You know, you'll probably know it, but um, you know, when they talk about there's a certain product that people know when they know what to expect from you, and if they know what your product is, the closer you are to that expectation directly correlates to your customer success and how happy your customers are. You know, so they'll say like McDonald's.
The churn to come back, for people to come back to because at the end of the day, it's not necessarily a recurring. Well, it kind of is in a way, right? Because you
Yeah,
want more repeat people. So the churn, you know, to be,
yeah. There's a specific word for it. I forget what it is, but
yeah,
basically what they're
can't remember
saying
what it
is,
is now either.
you know, what they're saying is, you know, if you go to McDonald's, it's kind of a shitty cheeseburger, but you know what to expect in a McDonald's cheeseburger. So people go to McDonald's expecting that cheeseburger, they get that cheeseburger, they're happy with McDonald's, they go back to McDonald's when they want that thing. You know, it's
Like you
not
set
that,
up the right expectation from the beginning, and then people kind of know what to expect. Of course, we all
right,
shoot in any kind of business to kind of exceed those expectations, but
right.
if you communicate the messaging properly for what people should expect, and then if you can go above that, the you know,
Right.
it's just
That's
better.
the thing. And if you go to a really good steakhouse to get a cheeseburger, and that cheeseburger is, you know, you're normally expecting a 10 out of 10, and you get one that's more like a 7 out of 10, and McDonald's is a 3, right?
Mhm.
Like you're still going to go back to McDonald's. Right? You're not going to go to the place that you're expecting a 10 and get a 3. So
Yeah.
um, so I don't know. That's one thing that we always try to do is we try to be pretty consistent, right? So for anybody that's going to come to our February event, if we don't end up in the general vicinity of 14 fights, like if we end up at 9 fights, that's a massive failure. I fucked up somewhere. You
Mm.
know, like I did something wrong if we have 9 fights, because my goal is to be 13 to 15. You know, that's where we want to be, with a lot of them pro, you know, probably more like, you know, 9 pro, somewhere in that range, and then, you know, 5 amateur, 6 amateur maybe. So you know, I think putting out a consistent product, and having it be a product that people like, I think helps. And I think
100%.
that gets people to continue to come back. Whereas, you know, if you were at the show that had, you know, less than 500 people, and there was a small number of fights, and not all of them were MMA, like I think that's something that, like, whatever product you're choosing to put out, as long as you're consistent with it, and you do a good job with the production, and you have a consistent product, I think, you know, because we've seen a lot of other shows that rely heavily on amateur, and it's almost all amateur, but they
Mm.
still do really well because they consistently will have a similar number of fights, and you know, they don't have you know, one show have it, you know, 10 amateur fights, 2 pro fights, and then the next have 4 amateur fights, and then 8 kickboxing fights, and then
One
like
super
I
fight, BJJ, and
yeah, I think when you like, it's fine every now and then to do something different, and to, you know, advertise it as something
test.
different,
Maybe to test and see how people respond to it or whatever.
Yeah, like there's nothing wrong with having a little fun and intentionally doing something different. But we've seen it on some other shows where out of necessity they lose a bunch of fights, and then all of a sudden they book just grappling matches and things like that. And if you're showing up expecting, if a previous show had
12 MMA fights and
12 MMA fights and it was all MMA, and then you show up to the next one and it's 8 MMA fights and 6 grappling matches, like all of a sudden it's, well, what the fuck is this? This isn't what I signed up for. So I don't know. I think it's easier to keep people coming back to your venue if you're giving them that consistent McDonald's cheeseburger, right? Like if they know what to expect and you give them the same thing every time.
No, and I remember even before I met you and before we were even doing this podcast, I remember I think it was June last year, or maybe even before June, May. I can't remember exactly what month it was. And that was in Wilmington. And then when I saw the production, especially, when guys come to the cage, the walk to the cage, and then you have the big screen and then the smoke and all the production over there, that, like, when I saw the first fight, I was telling to a buddy of mine, I'm like, damn, dude, like, look at this. Like, this looks legit. And then you had the commentators like right in front of the cage. I can't remember exactly if he was doing the UFC Fight Pass or not, but the production was one thing that really kind of stand out from the rest of the fights that I was kind of watching, last year and this year. But again, I mean, that was a huge plus for me. And I don't know, maybe it's a little bit of my marketing thing that I'm looking at all these things, but I was looking at the details of it. And that thing was really, in my opinion, was like great, great product and great attention to detail for those things. Because it also makes the fighters also feel good having that, but it also makes the people coming to see the fights be like, oh wow, like look at this, it's all nicely done and presented in a way that kind of stands out from the crowd, to be honest.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's what we're going for. We're not, a lot of people came to us when we came back and started doing fights, and it was, well, hey, you guys should do this because this show is successful and they do that, and you should try this and you should try that. And there were a lot of, like, we're not trying to copy other shows, right? That's not a shot at them. It's, we have things that we think make sense and we have things that we think work. So we're doing our thing, and our goal is to pack the venue and also put on really good fights for Fight Pass, and have a good quality product for television. And one thing that I mentioned to someone a while ago when they were talking about, oh, you need to do this, because these other guys do it. It's, well, we're trying to do different things, right? Like if they're in a venue that fits 1,000 people, like, let's just say that let's say that I'm really good and I do everything they're doing and I do it 35% better. To say that I'm not going to put on a show for 10 or 11 years and come in the door right off the bat and do everything that this guy's doing and do it 35% better, right? Like, that still only gets us to 1,350 people, 1,400 people, right? So
right.
we have to offer a different product. It's not, let's do the same thing they're doing and find a way to out execute them and do it better. It's, we need a different product. We need to do something different. So yeah, I think that's part of what helped. And it doesn't hurt when you have fighters that are selling a lot of tickets and that are marketable. That certainly doesn't hurt. But I think people saw our first event and there were fighters who hadn't fought in a little while that said, you know what? Yeah, I want to fight on that one. That this seems, probably what you saw, like the production and the interviews and the Fight Pass platform. It's something that when I talk to a lot of the managers outside of New England, the guys who are managing a lot of people in the UFC and have a lot of prospects they're trying to get to the UFC, they're targeting Fight Pass shows, and they've seen, they've had conversations with UFC executives and they know that the UFC is primarily taking people from their Fight Pass events and putting them into Contender Series, and then people who do good on Contender Series get into the UFC. So is it a requirement to fight on Fight Pass to get into the UFC? No. But if you look at the guys that are going into Contender Series, yeah, like a very high percentage of them have fought on UFC Fight Pass recently. And part of it is the UFC owns the footage, so it helps them promote the fights, and it's easier for them. They already own the footage, so they can show a lot of that previous stuff. So that helps too. So yeah, I don't know. We're trying to do things a little different, and we're trying to put on a show that everybody can be happy with and want to come check out. So I could talk for hours, and I tend to ramble a lot. So I'm gonna jump right into. I do want to recap the ones that we had last time.
Sure.
I'll try to go through them relatively quickly. I know a handful of them we're still waiting on the video footage, so we haven't posted it yet. So you wouldn't have had the chance to watch them, but I do kind of want to shout out everybody that fought for us. The fights were absolutely bananas right off the bat. And for anybody that was in attendance and was curious as to kind of why things were moving slow initially, one of the commission doctors didn't show up, or didn't show up for several hours. So we had to start the event with one doctor, and the doctor has to be cage side for every fight. And also he has to complete post-fight physicals on everybody to determine, is this guy okay? Does he need additional medical attention? Does he need to go to the hospital and get checked out? Like, they give them a kind of a clean bill of health and say, okay, this guy's good. And then they go back to the cage. Normally you don't have to wait for that process because there's two doctors. So there'll be a guy sitting at the cage. There'll be a different doctor doing the post-fight physicals. And, the event can keep moving. But with only one doctor there, the doctor had to be cage side to watch the fight. He'd do the post-fight physicals. 10 or 15 minutes later, he'd come walking back to the cage, and then we'd start the next fight. So there was a lot of time in between fights early on. And that sucked, that it ruined the flow of the event, and it also made us very late. So we had to put two fights after Fight Pass, which was not our intent. If we had the two doctors there as intended, it would have
was like that the whole night, or did the doctor eventually show up?
Yeah, about 8 o'clock. Yeah, like so okay. After the first 4 fights, give or take. But yeah, early on, there were a lot of time between fights, and that wasn't the goal. So for anybody that was in attendance and saw that, that's why. That wasn't us intentionally slowing down the flow. That was, we had one doctor, and we had to make sure that everybody was good before we moved on to the next fights. And the first 3 out of the first 4 fights that we had ended in really big knockouts. I can't say really. 2 of them were big. Like 2 of them were the type of knockouts where the doctor needs to take a really close look at guys, and 2 guys actually did end up going to the hospital for. Yeah, and everybody's fine, thank God. There were no major injuries. But yeah, there were 2 guys that needed to go get checked out. So we couldn't rush those post-fight physicals at all, because fighter safety is the most important thing. So yeah, let me just kind of start running through them. The first fight of the night was Tristan Tirano and Zach Dinesh. Was Zach's debut. He's a little bit older for a guy debuting. I think he's 34, so by no means old. Great athlete, in great shape, black belt in jiu-jitsu, fighting a young powerful guy in Tristan Tirano. First round was incredible. The 2 of them were going back and forth. Zach seemed to be controlling the fight a little bit. At least I wasn't analyzing it by any means, but just my opinion of it cage side was that he looked to be landing probably a little bit more than Tristan was in that first round. And I was thinking, it was probably going to be a matter of time before he went for the takedown and tried to utilize that black belt in jiu-jitsu. But that's not how it ended up going. Tristan he started landing a couple big shots, towards the end of the first round. He started to get his timing a little bit, and then he actually caught a leg kick that Zach threw and then came over the top with a right. And that was it. I mean, there were a couple
Oh,
hammer fists to follow up, but 21 seconds of the second round, Tristan had a very, very big knockout to start the night, and you could just feel the energy in the building. You could just feel everyone go absolutely crazy for it, because it was one of those knockouts that came out of nowhere, and it was just
wow.
um it was a really clean shot, and the place just went nuts, and it never cooled down the rest of the night. The building was just, the energy in there was crazy.
And this was the first fight, right?
First fight.
I mean,
Yeah.
what a great way to start the night.
Yeah, exactly. And it was on top of the fact that, I mean, I think any fight where there's a finish, whether it's a submission or a knockout, that tends to get the crowd more excited than a decision.
Oh, 100%.
But on top of that, it was a really good fight before that, right? So both guys looked very good in spots. And then, and then there was some finality to the fight. And I think, those are always the best fights. Like if it's, if the fights last a little while and both guys look good in spots and it's a back and forth thing, like that's what makes the crowd go crazy, not just the finish, right? So it was a really, really good fight, and we couldn't have picked a better one to start the night. And then the second fight we had, two young guys, Jared St. Jean, great fighter out of Spiro Martial Arts. He's only 19 years old, but
Oh,
he's
wow.
one of those guys that's been training since he was about 10. Purple belt in jiu-jitsu. He looked pretty good in his first fight with us. He won by first round submission. So I can't say pretty good. He looked great. He was fighting a tough guy, and he won. And he was fighting on this show, Joe Cortigiano from Team Savage down in Connecticut. And those guys, as the name would suggest, with Team Savage, they're all very tough. They all show up ready to fight. They're all durable guys. And the two of them went to war. It was, it looks like we did the time. I don't see reported online here, but I'd guess it was probably 2.5 minutes. But it was very back and forth. Both guys were landing big shots. It was obvious that they were two young and talented fighters. A lot of back and forth action, and then Jared ended up clipping him with a couple hard shots. He hurt him, and then he followed up with more strikes, and it was just a really, really good finishing sequence to the fight. So it was a big win for Jared, and and I don't know if you saw any of our videos on Instagram, but he was the guy that was yelling into the camera afterwards, "Who's next?"
Yeah, I
The
did
crowd
see
was going crazy.
that.
Yeah. So again, it went from one knockout right into the
To
next
the
fight.
next one.
There was another war between two guys that looked great that ended in a finish, right? So it was another really, really interesting fight, and the crowd just, the energy just kept right on going. And then Connor Hughes made his amateur debut. He's a guy that we've heard about for a little while now. He's been training a while, trains with a lot of good guys. He was fighting Julian Menjivar. Julian's a super exciting fighter. Tough thing for him is he'd prefer to fight at 115, but there's not a lot of 115-pound guys. So he tends to jump up and fight 125-pounders where, I think he weighed in at 119 or 121, something like that. So he's given up a size advantage to guys that are, cutting a little weight to get to 125. Connor looked fantastic in that fight. Connor took him down, used his jiu-jitsu, ended up taking the back, real slick rear naked choke. So great win for Connor Hughes in his first ever fight. We're, going to be excited to get him in on the next one. And then we had two more amateur
This was
fights.
a finish too, right?
Yep, that was a finish. Yeah, it was a choke. Yep, rear naked choke in about a minute.
Nice. Oh, wow. This was the third fight?
Yep. Yeah, the fourth fight of the night was, this was kind of crazy. It took a lot of people by surprise, I think, because Lucas Rosa is a very, very good prospect. He's the younger brother of Charles Rosa, UFC fighter Charles Rosa. 5-1 record in MMA. I think he's 5-0 in amateur kickboxing. He looked to be one of the better prospects at that weight class that we've seen in a long time. And he took on another guy from Team Savage, a guy named Nestor Yuja, who came in at, I believe his record was 3-3. but he's one of those guys that, his hands are very good.
Hmm.
He's, if Rosa was able to secure a takedown, I'm sure he would have had a big advantage there. But very, very early in the fight, I think it was probably the first punch that Nestor landed. It was a really clean hook, and just a short hook, and he put him out. I mean, 13 seconds in, the fight was over.
Damn.
Yeah, and it was. I mean, he couldn't have landed it cleaner. It was one of those shots that it would have knocked out a horse. It's like just everything about it was just it couldn't have landed better. It was the type of punch that like guys go their whole career hoping that they can land so they get it on a highlight video. It was so huge win for Nestor. I'm excited to see both of these guys. Hopefully both of them get on our February show. We're actively talking to both and trying to find something for both. And then I think the last one that you weren't able to see, the last one that we didn't have the Fight Pass quality video of, was our amateur title fight. John Virouette fought Dimitri Kaboris. John was supposed to fight another guy, but he hurt his hand, I want to say 10 or so days before the event. So Dimitri jumped in. He jumped at the opportunity to fight for the title as a last minute replacement. Very tough guy in Virouette. It was a good fight. Virouette controlled the action, had a couple big takedowns. I mean, Dimitri made him work for it. It was by no means a wipeout for Virouette. But he looked really good, and he ended up winning by TKO in the second round. So that was our first ever CombatFC champion, amateur champion John Virouette. He's looking to make his pro debut on our next show.
Nice.
I had someone matched up with him, and I see this happen a lot with guys will accept fights, and then I'll get contracts out, and then a couple of days later they reach back out and say, actually, I talked to my coach or my manager, and we watched. Make sense. Yeah, we watched a little film, and we're gonna pass on this one. They saw the
highlights of the last fight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was that, or if maybe they did a little research on him and saw what his wrestling background was and said, it doesn't make sense for us to fight that guy. So we're working on something new for Virouette, but he's going to be making his pro debut on our February 10th show.
That's what's up.
And I believe the rest of the fights, the rest of the way, I was able to get you the video of. So yeah, so Steven Stengel, he's got to be one of my favorite guys in MMA. He got his he fought for us a lot years ago. I think he probably, either him or Dan Bonnell, fought for us more than anybody.
Oh, wow.
Just about every single show Steven was on. And he's a guy that it's funny. I've used his name as examples when when we've talked about a variety of things, but when he fights on our shows, we tend to we're not bringing Steve in to try to get him killed. Whereas I think some other promoters, like, they know that he's a guy that's willing to fight anybody, so they offer him the toughest fight on the planet. They offer him a little more money, and then he comes in and fights the toughest guy on the card that happens to sell 1 million tickets. So Steve had a tough run of it. He lost something like 10 fights in a row or 9 fights in a row, and but they were all to absolute savages. And this was a fight that we put him in with a guy, Jeff Reynolds, very tough guy. He was making a pro debut. We put him in with Steve, evenly matched fight. We saw in that fight that Steve still carries that power that he was known for years ago.
The drive in him.
Yeah, and it was. I think he ended up knocking him out with the first punch he threw.
I can't remember what the finish was. I remember I saw the. Fight.
Yeah, it was a big knockout in 14 seconds. So kind of that very first exchange they had, he landed a huge right hand, and
Nights out.
Yeah, he's got a sledgehammer. So, he landed clean, dropped him, followed up with a few more shots, and Steve's back in the win column. So, I was really happy for him. He's a great guy. You're not going to find a guy that's, find a nicer guy in local MMA. So yeah, he was fired up, and we're looking to get him back on the show February 10th. We've got
Also, a lot of returners actually.
Yeah, the goal is to get a lot of guys back, and this is what I said to people a while ago, right? Is when we start matching up our shows, the guys that wanted to come in and fight for us on our earlier shows, they're always going to be guys that we're going to try to bring back. And we had a tough time matching guys for our June show. Whether it's I've been fighting here, I've been fighting there, or we're not sure what you guys are going to be like. We don't know if you're going to stick around. So we had trouble matching guys. So yeah, like the guys that wanted to take a chance with us, they're the guys that we're gonna try to be loyal to. So that's not to say we're not going to bring in other people too, but I'm not gonna, if a guy's fought for us on our first two shows, if a guy that happens to sell a little more tickets wants to fight on the next one, I'm not gonna bump a guy like Sanat Armudi, who came in and fought for us on our first two shows because another guy happens to be a little more popular.
Yeah, makes sense.
We're gonna try to stick with a lot of the guys that kind of helped us, get the ball rolling.
Get the ball, yeah.
Yeah, and if I can, I think, I was hoping to get a text back tonight about it. I thought I was going to be able to announce, Steven's fight, but
still working on it.
Still, yeah, I think his opponent's confirmed. I'm just waiting for the yes from Steve, and I'm sure he's going to say yes, but I don't want to, I don't want to give it away yet. So the next one, I know that Rodrigo Almeida.
Yeah.
So what'd you think of his fight with Matt Denning? That one kicked off Fight Pass for us.
That was the first one, right?
Yeah, first fight on Fight Pass.
It's funny. I'm trying to remember now, because then the moment you sent those to me, then I went on his YouTube channel to kind of see a little bit. I can't remember exactly what it was that draw my attention. Was that a finish in second round?
Yeah.
Second, right?
Yeah, it was the arm triangle. Yeah.
I mean,
and then he did a cool capoeira flip. So
yeah, that's his kind of like his bread and butter.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a tough one. It wasn't necessarily something that you could say from the beginning, like, okay, he's gonna, it could have been ended either way. It was a tough one, but Jiu-Jitsu doesn't lie.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, it was definitely a grind. Matt made him work for it. There was a lot more positional jiu-jitsu in that one. I don't know if I want to necessarily call it wrestling because it wasn't like the traditional.
It was more on the ground.
Yeah, it was more, more jiu-jitsu than anything, and it was a good fight. It was a lot of fun. Rodrigo ended up getting the win in the second round. He got back on track after the tough fight he had beforehand. It was his last loss.
The last one, I think.
Yeah, he wanted to put that one in the rearview mirror. So Rodrigo's back on track now, and he got called out by a guy shortly after that fight.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he got called out by a guy who hasn't fought in a while. I don't want to give it away until I get the contact. But yeah, a guy. I don't know if you've seen. There was some conversations that were being had on Facebook with. I think some guys saw Rick Hahn come in and fight, and they were like, you know what, if Rick's gonna get back in there and do another one, you know what, I want to do.
Why not me?
Yeah. So we've had a lot of guys that fought for us years ago that were saying, you know what, give me another one. Like, let's. Because I think local MMA used to be a lot of fun, and it used to probably feel a little more like a community than it does now. There's a lot of guys, and I think probably every generation could say that, right? I'm sure I'm 41. I'm sure the 51-year-old guys say, when it was our turn, like, we were cooler than, they were probably shitting on us, right? But there's a lot of guys that are probably 35 to 45 that miss their heyday, right? They miss what MMA was like and the camaraderie and all the, it seemed like
The
there were a
fun
lot.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like there were a lot more guys 10 years ago that would show up to events that they weren't fighting on and just hang out and drink beers. And I don't think we see that as much anymore. At least maybe it's not as noticeable because I don't recognize some of the younger guys who haven't fought for us yet. But anyway, there were a handful of guys talking about, hey, you guys should put on a handful of legends fights
Old
and
school.
guys,
Yeah.
yeah, get some of us old school guys, get us some more fights. And so we do have verbal agreements for Rodrigo to fight one of those guys that was a pretty big deal and fighting for local titles and winning local titles many years ago. So yeah, that'll be a fun one. It'll be interesting to see.
But it's nice if you think about it, right? Like a lot of these people see one guy that has fought maybe, like you said, 19 years ago, and then they want to jump back in, and then another one sees that person and all that, and then all of a sudden you got a circle of people that want to come back in the cage.
Yeah, and and there's been some guys, like some guys that are involved in local mixed martial arts who are like, oh, why would you book something like that? And it's like, because the goal is to have fun. like is your paying audience going to be excited to see the product that you put on? Yeah. Am I going to book an entire 14 fight card with guys who haven't fought in 5+ years? No. But
especially locally, people know these people know these guys, so they might, it's not just them wanting to fight, it's also their audience wanting them to see back in the cage.
Right. And the goal of our Fight Pass fights is to show up and coming prospects, either up and coming prospects or the best guys in the area. Right. Like that's the goal. Every now and then you kind of trip into something that, like that Rick Hahn and Jay-Z fight. That was something that I wasn't expecting to get. And then when we were able to get it, it was okay. I got to book this fight. Like, this is a really cool fight. I'd have to say, moving forward, it's, a lot of our Fight Pass fights are, again, mostly up and comers or, guys that are, the best handful of guys in the area. That's the goal. As far as the rest of the night, yeah, we want to have some amateur fights that are fun and some guys that are eventually going to turn into pros for us, like John Virouette. And in between, the goals have fun. That's
and I think that's great for people to know what they can expect moving forward too. It's it's a great way to kind of paint the picture. All right, this is what's going to happen in the next couple events, and obviously you with this podcast now you can give people a more in-depth behind the scene kind of view.
Yeah,
so that's cool.
Yeah, and we can either add in an extra amateur fight or two, or we can have a popular guy who hasn't fought in 10 years, right? We swap out an amateur fight for something like that. So it's not, we're not taking away from anything. We're just adding a really fun thing to the show, or at least fun for me. And maybe it's fun for me because that was my, my time when to me, I was most into local MMA, right? So anyway, I'm excited about the fight. I'll announce it probably next week. And then the next fight, the next Fight Pass fight was a guy who I think is one of the better prospects in the area, Mike Bulger. He was supposed to fight a different guy who, I'll spare you the details, but he didn't get his medicals done. So about 10 days out, I had to make the switch and try to find someone else to fight Mike. And that's kind of a tall order because, he was 2-0 amateur MMA, 2-0 pro boxing with 2 first-round knockouts, and his first pro MMA fight was a first-round knockout. So he hasn't fought any super tough guys yet because he's young in his career, but everybody that he fights, he's putting away. So, when I'm reaching out to someone, if I'm talking to a fighter from New Jersey who's thinking about coming up and taking the fight, it's tough to find many flaws when every pro fight he's had, whether it's boxing or MMA, is a first-round knockout, right? And they're like, I don't want to be the first, I don't want to be the guy, the guy that's 3-2 that, like, I don't want to be his first, I don't want to roll the dice here. I don't want to be his first tougher fight because then if he runs me over too, like then I'm, like I'd rather see him fight
a couple more times before.
Yeah, I'd rather see him fight somebody with 5 or 6 fights that's not me, and then I'll see how he looks against that guy, and then I'll decide if I want to fight him.
Next card.
Yeah, so it was Bruce Richards from Vermont who took the fight, and Bruce has got something like 60 amateur fights. Like he's
60?
Yeah, like he's got, or I think technically it's like 45 amateur fights, but then he's also got like 15
exhibition type of,
like they were like special rules grappling matches, and like on some of these fight cards, like not like Naga matches, like matches where they're on an actual event, that like a fight event, and it's you're supposed to do a super fight with this guy. And so even if we go with the smaller number and say 45, he's got a ton of amateur fights. And he turned pro not that long ago. He's got, I think he had 4 pro MMA fights, but he had some pro kickboxing fights. So he's a guy that's been around a long time. And he's a guy that likes to do this.
I mean, I can tell.
Yeah. Anytime you see a guy that's got like 45, 50 amateur fights, like he's got likes to fight. He was willing to take the fight with Bulger. And Bulger was all over him. He landed a couple clean shots. Bruce had mentioned that he was going to try to take this thing to the ground. He said he didn't really want to mess with Mike on the feet, and he thought his jiu-jitsu was going to be superior, and was what was going to win the fight for him. And Bulger was just all over him as soon as, I think, Bruce was even talking about possibly pulling guard. I think he tried to pull guard, and Mike was just relentless. He landed a bunch of hammer fists from the top. He was all over him with strikes, ended up taking the back and choking him for the win in the first round. It sounds like Mike's going to be out for a little bit. He ended up breaking his hand in the fight. So, we won't see Mike in February. We'll probably see him at the event wearing like a cool shirt or something, because he always shows up. Yeah, well, and he always shows up like last time he had on like a Michael Myers jean jacket and a shirt with like blood on it and shit. So like he's always got something. And the time before that, it was like a look like a Miami Vice type thing, right? He had his shirt unbuttoned, like a Hawaiian shirt. Like he's one of those dudes that when he walks in the room,
you can feel the presence there.
Like he's somebody. You might not know who he is when he walks in, but you're like, who the fuck is that guy? Like that, like there's something about that guy, and so yeah, I'm sure we'll see Bulger at the event, and I'm sure he'll be, he won't just be, fitting in with the crowd. Like he'll be a guy that, looks important. So we will see him at the event, but he won't be fighting on the next one. And then the next fight we had was a guy I mentioned earlier, Senate Armudi. He had a whole bunch of opponents pull out on him as well. So we ended up getting Anthony Pike from Arizona. Super tough guy, Arizona State wrestler. Very, very good fighter. He fought in that there was a tournament out here out in Springfield, and he won a fight in that tournament, all in one night, like 8-man tournament. Yeah, so he won. He went 1-1 in that tournament. He's fought a lot of other tough guys. He kind of had, as he put it, like a little bit of a brain fart in the fight, because he wanted to go out there and try to stand and throw with Armudi and didn't want to mess with his jiu-jitsu. But that old wrestler came out, right? So as soon as he threw a few punches and closed the distance, it just that natural wrestler took over, and he was trying to go for a big slam, and as soon as Armudi was able to get the fight to the ground, it was I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to think of the phrase that I was going to use, but yeah, he was just too slick. He couldn't, Pike couldn't get anything going, and almost immediately he was fighting.
I want to go back and watch the fight again now.
Yeah, once it hit the ground, it was started with a guillotine, and then from there it was, he gave up on that and went to a triangle, and then switched sides and got the sweep, and ended up finishing with the triangle looked tight, but then he ended up pulling on the arm, so it was looked like an arm bar that officially got the finish. But the triangle was there too. I mean, it was as tight as can be. So, I'm pumped about Armudi. He's now 3-1. Not a lot of people want to fight the guy. Not a lot of people in New England want to fight him. I've asked a lot of people, and not a lot of people want that fight. And why would you? He's a 6'4" he's a 6'4" black belt, and he's pretty good at using his reach, and so he's not a guy that's just going to stand there and slug with you. Like, he's a pretty technical guy in the stand up as well. And then he's, I can't think of anyone that's a better grappler than him that's active, right? There might be some guy that's a jiu-jitsu instructor somewhere that doesn't fight, but as far as active 170-pound pros, I don't know who'd be a better grappler than him in the Northeast. So yeah, he's a tough fight. I mean,
so it'd be tough to put him on February 10th then.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get him on there. We're gonna get him on there, but I'll probably have to fly somebody in for him, or have somebody drive in from New York, New Jersey, something like that. But again, he's a guy that he fought on our first show and was one of our Fight Pass fights. He took a pretty tough fight. Was willing to fight literally anybody on this show, on the last one. So yeah, he's a guy that we're gonna try to stay loyal to and get him on as many shows as we can. And I'm interested to see where that kid's career goes, and where he ends up. So he's
100%.
he's still on the right side of 30, so that helps. But he's a guy that's looking to stay active and try to make a run at this thing and see if he can get to the next level. So, the next fight, we had 3 more Fight Pass fights, and I don't want to take up too much time. I know we got a couple other things to chat about tonight too, but Jake Pilla looked fucking fantastic. That was a fight that on paper looked to be, I thought that was going to be fight of the night. Josh Krejci had won a fight on BKFC, his only BKFC fight, purple belt in jiu-jitsu. Both guys have an exciting fighting style where they just come right out and get after it. I thought that was going to be the best fight on the entire show. Jake landed a few strikes, hurt him with a punch, grabbed the guillotine, and it was over in 25 seconds. Couldn't have been a better debut, a Combat FC debut than Jake Pilla had. He's now 2-0. We do have his fight booked for February 10th. Nice. So excited to see Pilla's next fight, and he's taking another step up in competition. So he's fighting a guy that had some amateur fights. He's got about 10 pro fights, also some kickboxing fights. So he's fighting a guy that definitely has more experience than him. Should be an interesting fight. Hopefully we can announce that one next week as well. And then Jay Bakanowski and Jake Bone, that was a fantastic fight. Bakanowski had him hurt bad in the first round. Looked like he almost got him out of there. But experience is something that you can't buy that. And and Jake Bone came in with 20 pro fights, so he's been dropped in fights before. He knows how to fight through that and stay calm, and you really saw the veteran in Jake Bone come out in that fight. So I mean, round 1 was a clear round for Bakanowski. And then from there, I'd say the last 2 rounds were a little closer, but it was a very, very good fight. But unanimous decision for Jake Bone, and he started to pull away in that one a little. I think towards the end, he looked like he had a little more left in the tank, and Bakanowski hurt himself in the fight too, so that never helps. But yeah, big win for Jake Bone. It was a great fight. With a lot of the quick finishes that we had on Fight Pass, it was a really good thing for the show too. That this
to have the whole 3 rounds
with the distance. Yeah, it as good as the finishes are. We can't have if we had 6 first round finishes, that's not necessarily a good look. Like, no matter how well you match the fight, stuff like that happens. But it was really good that we had a nice back and forth war mixed in there too. In the main event, Jay-Z Cavalcante, first fight for him in a long time. Same thing with Rick Hahn, 2 legends of the sport. Great fight. Very technical fight. It was something that I think when we saw those guys in the cage, it didn't have the same pace as some of the earlier fights, but it was obvious you were watching something different. It was obvious that, okay, these guys, the just the I don't know how to say it other than technical, right? Like they were obviously the most technical guys on the show, and they both look good, and ultimately Jay-Z was able to get the submission in the second round. So welcome back, to MMA for both guys. I know that they're both looking to fight again. I don't think Rick's going to be on this February card. He's going to look to probably get on the next one. More like our June show. But I was glad to see both guys back, and I'm excited to see them fight. A few more times before things are all said and done. And that concluded the Fight Pass broadcast. And because we had
the whole situation with the delayed.
Yeah, the situation with the doctor. We had a couple fights that went on after Fight Pass. So give me 1 second here. All right, so you know what? Perfect timing. I actually am gonna announce a fight that actually, you know what? I don't want to announce a fight. I just got confirmation back from Steve Stengel that he's gonna take the fight that we were talking about earlier. That just hit my cell phone as we were talking here.
That's what's up.
So I'm not gonna officially announce it.
We'll announce it next week.
Yeah, but I don't know, the guy who I was about to talk to next happens to have a similar style to Steve Stengel and happens to compete in the same weight class.
You never know.
So who knows, right? It might be. So Aaron Trissell is he fought Chris Almestica, and Aaron, I think you might not know him as Aaron Trissell. Everybody calls him Louisiana, but because that's where he's from. Obviously, he had a big head kick knockout in round one of his fight. And similar to Steve, he was matched up in some pretty tough fights early in his career. So he started his career 0-3, but as you saw in that fight, he's pretty clearly not your typical 0-3 fighter.
No.
He looked excellent. He looked excellent in that fight. He fought a really tough guy in Chris Almestica. Chris had something like 10 amateur fights. So that was by no means an easy fight. And Aaron landed a really clean head kick. And it was the thing that always impresses me is when guys are hurt and guys are kind of starting to go down, but they're still alert. When guys are able to land a couple more punches while the guy is hurt and obviously falling, and because had he not landed those follow-up punches, Almestica would have hit the ground, he would have hit his butt, and he's still in there and he's alert. But because Aaron was able to hit him 2 more times as he was hurt and stumbling, like that's always been a really impressive thing for me. In whether it's boxing or MMA, like when their head's not where it's supposed to be, can you still hit them? In that split second that the guy's falling, if you can land 2 more shots as the guy's going to the ground, that's impressive to me. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, Aaron landed the head kick as Chris was still alert and going to the ground. He got hit 2 more times, and that was all she wrote. I mean, it was a first round knockout. Again, there's no time that I'm seeing for that one online, but it was somewhere between a minute to 2 minutes.
No, but there was an exciting 2 minutes.
It was. It was a really good back and forth fight too. It wasn't just the head kick landing. I mean, both guys looked like they belonged in there.
100%.
It wasn't Lamb versus Lion in that one. They were both really good fighters, and I'm excited to see both guys in the future. But yeah, big knockout for Aaron Trissell. That actually was our knockout of the night as determined by one of our sponsors. So I do want to mention that too, but I do want to shout out the last 2 guys here. Jeff Savian or Swavelin, I'm sorry, Jeff Swavelin and Max Lombardo. These are 2 guys that were, they were both taking their first pro fight ever at, roughly age I think they're 39 and 40.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and on top of that, they thought they were going to go on before Fight Pass, and then we're told actually you guys are going to be delayed 2 hours. So I
A
know
lot
you've
of
already warmed up, but
anticipating in between. Yeah.
yeah, I know you've already warmed up, but you're gonna have to cool down. Sorry about that. The doctor thing. So both guys fought their asses off. It was back and forth, and Max was able to win by decision in that one. So I believe it was a split decision for Max Lombardo. So congrats to Big Max, but thanks to Jeff as well. It was great to see two
And
guys that
sorry for
are.
cutting up. In case people want to watch these fights on replay, they can go on UFC Fight Pass and
Yep.
rewatch, right? As long as they
Yeah,
have
they
a
can.
membership.
Yep, they can see them on Fight Pass. There's you won't be able to see just the 6 Fight Pass fights you'll be able to see, but the
Yeah.
plan is to upload everything to our YouTube channel soon as well. And I know you've got to run shortly, so the other thing I just want to shout out is I want to thank the sponsors that we had on the event, because we did some really cool things with our sponsors too. We had Sweet Heel CBD. They were the what's the word I'm looking for? Presenting sponsor. They had our center
Nice.
cage logo, and they they were the biggest sponsor for the event. In addition to the advertising, they also provided a prize for performance of the night, and that they were going to choose an athlete that they felt was put on the best performance of the night, and they were giving a 12-month sponsorship in which they're going to send out free CBD product every month.
Wow. Nice.
So yeah, they valued it at about $1,200. They said they were going to do about $100 in product every month, and they gave that to Jake Pilla. So Jake won the CBD Sweet Heel CBD performance of the night.
Nice.
So thank you to Sweet Heel for doing that. And then we also had Pro Warrior Construction. I believe Jan Oliveira. I think he trains off and on with you guys. So yeah, he offered a cash prize. He had I think it was a knockout of the night, submission of the night, and performance of the night. So he gave 3 $500 bonuses to people that he chose and picked. So it was the knockout of the night was Aaron Tressel. So he gave him a check for 500, and he did print out those big ass checks too for pictures. So yeah, he gave 500. Aaron got some cash for his knockout, and that's always cool in local MMA, because not a lot of these guys aren't making a ton of money. So an extra $500 is a meaningful amount of money. And in the other performance of the night winners, Rodrigo Almeida got the submission of the night. And his other performance of the night went to Nestor Yuja for his shocking knockout of Lucas Rosa. So it was, those 3 fighters all got a little extra money from one of the sponsors. And the last one I want to mention is HKA USA. They were our glove company, so we made custom gloves with them, and they sponsored the event as well. They provided a prize for our fight of the night winners, and that was Jay Bakanowski and Jake Bone. So they both got a prize pack of $300 worth of gear from HKA USA. So they were gonna, I don't know if they're gonna end up doing custom stuff or if they're gonna pick out some other things, but they basically said, hey, we'll give you $300 worth of our stuff, whatever you guys want. So that was pretty cool. Of the 14 fights, there were a total of, I'm trying to do math now, is that 6 guys? There were 6 guys that got a little something extra.
That's a huge plus. It's
a
huge plus for the guys too. I mean, it's not easy, the time that it takes, all the money invested in training and supplements and all that. So it's always a nice plus for them.
Yeah, and everybody, and the CBD sponsor, Sweet Heel CBD, they also gave everybody a gift bag as well at the weigh-in. So they had I don't know a ton about CBD, but they gave them a muscle rub, some gummies, a tincture, and there was all kinds of stuff. They gave out we've had some sponsors say, yeah, we'll do something for the fighters, and they give them like a t-shirt or something like that. Whereas I would say at retail value, there were probably
$200,
yeah, $200, $300 worth of stuff that they gave every fighter. So
nice.
Again, that's a cool thing.
It's nice of them.
Yeah, every fighter on the show got a little something, and so yeah, thank you to Sweet Heel CBD as well as HK USA and Pro Warrior Construction. So yeah, we got our February 10th show coming up. Where that's booking up fast. I booked a title fight, pro title fight as well this week. We're hoping to announce that next week. As soon as tickets go on sale, we're going to start announcing a lot of stuff. And I've got the the flyers made up already for a lot of these fights, and just waiting until tickets go on sale and until I get contracts
What's
back
the
from
date?
guys.
What's the date that the tickets going to sell?
We don't have an official date.
Yep. Okay. We'll announce it.
We tend to, because we just have to deal with the ticket agency and get there's some things they have to do on their end, and just to get get everything set up, and then we go back and forth on a handful of things, like we have to approve seating charts and this, that, and then as soon as it's done and we're ready to go live, we just put them on sale. We don't schedule a date in which everything is on sale. Yeah, we put it on sale right away, and then we do send something out to our email list right away, to let them know that hey, like, tickets are going to go on sale to the general public Monday, something like that, right? So if tickets go on sale on Wednesday officially, or I'm sorry, Wednesday, as soon as it's live, we email everybody and tell them, hey, the website's live right now. We're officially, we're going to start pushing it on our social media, and we're going to announce it everywhere.
Monday. And if people want to go on the email list, how do they sign up? Where do they go to sign up for the email list?
That's a really good question. So we've got an email list that we used to have. We need to set that up on our website.
We'll take care of it for the next episode. We'll put up
because we've got a website right now. I don't know if there's a link to sign up for the email list. If you message us on Instagram, I can add you to it manually. But our old website used to have a link where people could actually just sign up for the email list. We have a database that we use, and anyone who's bought tickets in the past will be added to that database, where we'll let you know about future ticket sales, and we don't crush people with emails either. We send out, I think, probably 5 total emails about an event, with 2 of them being the last week. So it's, we don't crush your email box if you get added to our email list. We just kind of give you a little bit of information, keep you updated. And
I will make sure to list the Instagram account in the description of this episode in the show notes, and then you guys can just message Rick directly through that Instagram account, and then we'll be able to add you. And then next week we'll take care of making sure that we'll have a sign up page for people to be on the list. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, kind of the recap of what happened to the last event, fights, and also the sponsors and everything else. Don't forget, you can always help the show a little bit by just hitting that subscribe button. If you're on Apple, you just hit that top right plus button, and then you'll automatically just subscribe you. That way you can be kind of in alert and in touch with all the episodes coming up. And then if you're listening or consuming on any other platforms, obviously it's just a simple plus somewhere either left or top right, where it'll allow you to subscribe. But anyway, guys, want to say thank you again for being with us here on the show. Rick, was cool to have this chat with you about the event, and I'm actually more excited about the next episode coming up, because you'll announce some of the fights. Also, we'll chat more into what can people expect on the next February 10th. But this was cool. Anything else you want to add before we wrap things up?
No, I'm good. Actually, you know what? One last thing, in case we don't get to do another podcast before the fight. Good luck to Jay Perrin on December 10th.
100%. So. Yeah. Jay will have December what? What?
I believe it's December 10th.
December 10th. Yeah, we'll try to put. We'll not try. We'll definitely link up Jay in the description below, his Instagram account, so you guys can wish him or message him, or just to kind of stay in touch with him for the fight coming up.
Yeah, and for those of you that are listening for the first time, Jay Perrin has a big fight in the UFC. If you remember the kid that won on Contender Series, and at age 17, and is now in the UFC at age 18, that's who Jay's fighting in December, and he's normally one of the co-hosts of the show.
Show.
If this is the first time you're hearing our podcast, normally Jay would be with us, but he's training hard for that fight. So good luck, Jay.
Yeah, he's the third co-host of the show. He's kind of diving into the fighter mode and also, you know, tips and other stuff like that. So good luck on the fight, brother. And we'll catch all of you guys on the next episode. Thank you. Peace.